Is there any way that you've incorporated structure in terms of like your planning or the way that you prepare for your songwriting? Or let's say if you're preparing for any sort of musical performance, like is there a structure that gives you brings you comfort, right? That gets you in a mindset of like I'm ready to perform.
In terms of specifically performance, because I know there I personally have a different structure for how I handle completing like a song, like recording, versus preparing for like performing live or on Twitch. Um, yeah, to clarify, you meant performance, right?
Yeah, performance. Yeah.
For performance, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think for performance, I think a big part of it is, I guess, sort of mentally knowing that you have a date coming, like a like XYZ date is coming, and you're clear about your goals for this event. Like, do you want to sell tickets? Do you want to get your name out there? Are you doing this just for the sake of expression to show people that this is what I'm going through? And these pieces help, help me cope with life and everything like that. Like, figure out your goal. That's the first thing I do. And then the next thing I do from there is, I guess, the logistical piece of what do I need for the venue, right? Like, do I need a band to be able to play at this loud bar? Then, okay, talk to the people that, need to join. Is it an acoustic venue, like a coffee shop? Then, okay, we're good with what we got. And it's like figuring out medium because for me, I rap over instrumental beats that, I produce. And then at the same time, I also do play like live instruments and have a loop machine. So medium is important to figure out, what we're doing with this show, with this performance. I think the most direct answer to this question, though, is I think, to be honest, when there is a show that has a clear date, like, 2 or 3 days from now, for instance, um, closer to the date, I get immensely focused and I try to eat healthier, try to hydrate, try to, get more sleep, maybe do a couple stretches or a couple things to make me feel physiologically and emotionally good to go on stage and kind of, crush it. That would be my advice for anybody is like healthy food the day of, light, lots of water, maybe some yoga stretches, easygoing thing, and vocal warm up, and then we're good. We Gucci.
Does that differ than your preparation, like on the day of? Let's say, like, okay, you have a performance on the day of, right? Like, what's kind of that preparation? Like, are you preparing your voice, right? You're obviously eating healthy, things like that. But even leading up to like traveling to the venue, bringing all of your stuff, the stage setup, um, waiting for the crowd to kind of come in. Like, talk to me a little bit more about that and what your bodily sensations are like. Like, does your body tense up, right? Are you in a relaxed state, right? Like, because you're going through a transition from being off stage and preparing, and then when you're on stage, like that's got to be a very different kind of experience.
That experience is essentially, it's a transition between butterflies and no butterflies, where the preparation on the day of, I think a lot of it may have already happened ideally before the day of, where understanding as an artist, you do your best to speak to the venue on logistical things like sound, which are really important, like what equipment, PA systems, what does the artist need to bring for their performance specifically, how many folks are playing with them, and is there room for that? Is it on a stage or is it in a coliseum setting, or are we level to the crowd? If I'm new to a venue on the day of the show, then I think the big thing that I'm thinking about is stuff like that. From there, ideally, I arrive to the venue a couple hours early, or at least an hour early, to really help solidify, those things in my head. In that sense, it's similar to like a test, right? There's like studies from like way back in the day that say like, oh, if you visit the room that you took a test in before, like the SATs or whatever, then you'll feel that much more comfortable when you actually take the test. So I think those are big things. Introducing yourself to the venue, owner or the folks who are running the event, and build excitement, because it is exciting for you to perform for their crowds. And closer to when people start walking in, when doors open, naturally, most performances will have a doors open period where you're there, but you're not doing the thing. People are walking. Some of them you might know. You can say hi, everything like that, but you're not doing the thing yet. In that case, I think that's where I say butterflies, where it's just handling the nervousness, handling that sort of excited energy, welcoming people in, saying hi. I think helps me. Helps give me some extroverted energy to kind of jump up. But other than that, I think nothing else in terms of preparing for like a show on the day of or within the hour of. I think it's more maybe some vocal warm ups, some stretches, like I mentioned before. There's a lot of theater exercises that help get you loose, at least feeling silly, like rubber chicken, where you go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, like with all of your like limbs. And I think stuff like that really helps because it just makes you feel okay, like, you know, we're open. We're ready to get silly. We're ready to do whatever. And then you get on stage and then the butterflies go.
Sometimes I'm sure at performances you won't be the only one that's performing. Like there'll be other performers, before you, or maybe you're the first one to perform, right? So I'm curious when you have other performers at a show, right? Like how do you leverage their energy and how does that feed into your performance? Like, do you ever feel like, oh, someone really killed it right at the beginning of a show? You feel the crowd's energy really ramping up. Do you feel this pressure to kind of like match that energy? And does it ever take you out of your own comfort zone in terms of what other artists are doing or what the current crowd's energy is like?
Very good question. Very, very good question. I think the big part of that is, yeah, trying your best to be a good listener, trying your best to be, I think, aware of the event. One thing I can think of, which is slightly unrelated but very related, is set order, right? Are you the headliner of the event? Are you the middle person? Are you the opener? Are How many performers are there? These are all things that I guess help build, I think, your context going into this event of what you should be performing for the overall health of the space and the night, right? Or day. Um, if somebody was performing before me, like in your example, and they crushed it, they got the crowd absolutely excited and quote unquote warmed up. That definitely does build nerves for me. But I think most of the nerves that get built for me are registering in a positive, excited, albeit sort of antsy pocket. Um, I feel motivated. There are parts that maybe could feel there being a level of competition or a level of like, ooh, like dang. But ultimately, I think those are good feelings to have if you are prepared for your performance because it makes you want to show up. It does make you want to match or expand upon or take the audience on a different plane, but not necessarily cause a decline in their experience. So for me, it's good nervous, but it is nervous if someone performs again before me and they crush it. Um, I think other opinions that I have about this topic is, if you're opening, your natural goal for the event most of the time is to get the audience to be excited or to have like a good positive energy that's saying like I'm ready for more. So some of my more maybe sad emotional songs, unless they're very, very popular, like ones in my catalog, I probably will refrain from because the goal is to keep the night going with people who are loving music. If you're the headliner, I think there's a reason you're headlining the event, whether you booked it or you're doing an album release show or something like that. I think in that space, you don't have to worry as much about continuing the rise. I think your goals become different. You can take them down, really, really chill, intimately. You could take them up, take them down, take them left, and take them right. Um, I think it's yeah, things to think about for sure. But yes, nerves.
I mean, it sounds like nerves are generally a really good thing, right? Like because it gets you prepared, it gets you in, probably gets you excited, right? It gets you in that moment of, yes, your body might be tensing up, but it gets you mentally focused and ready. At least that's how I guess I would imagine it.
Yeah, yeah. I think nerves do a funny psychological thing too. I remember there was a psychological study that was talking about if you don't feel proficient or competent or confident in a skill or like executing a specific thing, if like a spotlight is shined on you, then yeah, if a spotlight is illuminated upon you, you have a tendency to maybe like mess up a bit more. However, if you know have a spotlight shined upon you and you feel competent or you feel excited, you feel like or you feel like confident in a specific skill or executing of a thing, you actually expand. You become better at the thing you do because of the fact that you're nervous and it's something that's close to you. I say that giant anecdote, that random anecdote, to say that if you are prepared to perform, as in you practice, you've rehearsed, or you are in this realm where you are open to not practicing or rehearsing, like improv, I think the nerves only seek to help you. However, if you find yourself getting naturally tripped up more often than not because of nerves, like causing you to forget words or to shy away or to fumble certain parts of your performance, there's probably room for exploration there. There's probably room to figure out, well, what caused the nervousness in a way that actually made me, not perform as well and not feel as good as I could have, in terms of this. And that's where it's like it's healthy both directions, I think.
I'm curious on if you have, or I'm curious if you have any examples of when maybe you flubbed up during a live performance and you kind of got down on yourself, or maybe that it wasn't necessarily your night, like you're just a little bit out of sorts, even though you did prepare. Like, what were ways that you got yourself back on track, or at least got the crowd to be entertained, right? Because at the end of the day, like they paid money not only to go to the bar, but also to have a live performance, hear live music. And the funny thing is, one of my comedian friends basically said the crowd wants you to succeed, right? Because they literally paid money for them to be entertained. So talk to me a little bit how you jump back from failure, or flubbing up during a musical set, and how you get the crowd back on its feet.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think everyone like mileage will vary on how to, I think, properly handle this, and there's no like one fail-safe way, I believe, because venues and crowds and like the performer, like those things all just make a bunch of different um, situations where one thing can go over the other. But going back to your question, apologies. Yeah, I think an example of a time that I felt very passionate about performing well and there were mistakes in the performance that maybe threw me off. I did perform recently. I would say about 2 weeks ago. I performed at a local music venue in like an open mic setting, and at this open mic, I was performing Hyperfocus, which is a new song that I just released. Usually, people listen to Hyperfocus with a beat. I wanted to play it with guitar, like a stripped down version. And I enlisted the help of a new open mic friend that I met at this venue. And the thing was that both of our schedules were really busy, meaning that I was able to send the music over and tell, kind of direct what I wanted with the performance over like IG chat and like email, but we haven't practiced together, in person. And on the night of, you know, there were certain harmonies that I wasn't used to, like as in performing with another person, and it caused me to, I think, flub up some lyrics, a couple lines of my rap verse. Luckily, during that moment, as a performer, you at least the advice I would give anyone in that moment where you flub up is the idea that the car is still driving. You keep going. You take them home. You take them home, even if there are like bumps and you like hit a mouse on the road, even if like you get lost, you take them home somehow. And at least in that performance, after the flub ups, like a few flub ups, I was able to get it back together, wrap the rest of the verse. The second half of the song was magical, I felt, for some people, as in I got a lot of compliments from the crowd afterward and from peers and individuals who were saying like, holy crap, like that was really, really cool. Um, in the post performance section, I think that flub up was a message to me that you need to try to prepare for all variables, including the ones that are outside of your control. In this case, it was the collaborator who, you know, what they do, I can't have any control over, and it showed itself in that night. So good lesson for next time to, practice more, or to find routes where, you don't run into that again.
When those moments happen, right, because sometimes they're not always planned, like do musical performers, and I'll use a football analogy, like they have audibles, right? They got to change something on the fly when something isn't working. Like, is that something that musicians prepare kind of in their back pocket, like, oh, like say that situation happened, or you mess up, or the beat is off, right? Is there something kind of in your back pockets, like, I know what I'm going to do to smooth it over, to, like you said, bring the crowd home?
I think in that sense, that's like what you do in that situation is you have almost a combined, it's a combination solution. Having both the spontaneity and the openness and like mindfulness to see what's going on, right, with the crowd, like if they're not feeling a certain type of music, um, then yes, feeling that, having that awareness. I think the second part of it is ultimately preparedness. It goes back to preparedness, where um, having several B-side tracks or B-side pieces that you can kind of cycle into effortlessly if there are any issues that happen on the fly, right? Like if I'm playing with a band and I have two guitarists and one of the guitarists like amp and cable break, meaning that we're one guitar down, then it's having the ability to pivot and say, all right, we're going to play this song instead because it doesn't need a second guitar, at least until ideally that musician like figures it out like silently. Um, that has definitely happened before. um, which I think, yeah, it's preparation, having stuff in your back pocket that you can go to and that you've practiced enough as if you were going to perform it that night, even though it wasn't on your planned set list. I think those things will take you a long way for sure.
Do you guys, when you're, let's say, preparing as a group or a band, right? Like you're going through all of your sets and things like that in preparation for an actual performance. Do you ever just ask someone that's not in your band, like, can you just like at one moment sabotage, right, our practice? And, that way, like we have to come up and prepare for something, like just accidentally unplug the cable, like, during, I don't know, maybe like an 8 hour practice session, and, we'll figure out how to resolve it. Like, how do you guys practice? And I know you mentioned you want to be prepared for these situations, but do you ever recreate any of those kinds of situations when you practice, so just so like you have a mental recreation of like what to do on the spot, so that when you actually do prepare, right, like it's not just like we have to panic for a little bit and then immediately switch to this song or do something else?
Yeah, that's a great question. That, to be honest, we don't like for me, like I don't ever practice situations where there's intentional sabotage. It's a very smart idea because it does help you, I think, at least have a gauge of the emotional experience that could happen within you and your bandmates when someone is trying to do something, which does build preparedness. In fact, I think battle rappers, in the realm of like rap battling, like if it's freestyle rap battling, they probably practice their verses and their things in different contexts. Like if someone's yelling over them while they're rapping their verse or whatnot, someone's shaking them, you know. I I think that speaks to what you're saying, where it's like be ready for resistance and still execute your piece, right? Um, I don't do that explicitly, like at least with the cables that you mentioned, the like them unplugging things or yelling "get off the stage" or anything like that. But what I can say is, I do try my best to practice my parts that I can practice, um, in multiple areas, in multiple spaces, at multiple times of the day. I'll rap I'll rap my verses for a rap song while, taking a shower, while waiting in line at the Pete's Coffee or whatever, at the grocery store, while there's downtime, I'll write the lyrics down, right? Like there are ways that you can, I think, build up versatility and also a kind of a good confidence in your knowledge of your work, by doing this, um, and but we should add that. I think that could be a good exercise you brought up, Mike, of like, you know what? Have someone try to heckle you, have someone try to, shout out lyrics at like an offbeat time with you, like if they know the same lyrics you have or the chorus, clapping offbeat, like, those things definitely help. Hire some trolls, I'm sure there's a market for that on Fiverr,
Oh, even let's say it doesn't have to be a negative externality. It could be a positive externality. Like the crowd is just so loud, right? Like it's difficult to, hear the sounds of, let's say, your other musicians or other instruments, right? Like, and you're kind of potentially in your own void. And, it's probably like maybe a different level of preparedness. Like if like your sound is just you and you can only hear your own sound and because the crowd maybe is so loud or whatever.
That also goes down to the idea of like removing variables, because there's always variables no matter what. Even like just visiting the venue not the day of the performance, I think really helps. Like go there just to be a customer so that you can kind of see where would I perform, like what would it sound like, what are some problems I could run into. I think that helps too, like with what you're saying, like, um, positive, yeah, people shouting. Are people loud in this venue in general, right? Like if you're playing like a soft little folk thing on a ukulele and you're playing at a loud bar that like 4 days out of the week there's like there's a sports ball, there's like a basketball game going on in the other room and like other stuff, and loud bartender screaming, like these are things you should know about before you perform there so that you can adjust yourself accordingly. Like get a plug-inable ukulele and crank it to 11.
Makes sense. Those are all really good, I think, preparation tips and I think of mindfulness of your surroundings.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is like also have spares, you know. Having spares of stuff like cables super freaking helps. I played bass for a nerdcore artist, and just rap singer, super talented, artist in New York named Lex the Lexicon Artist, and my cable crapped out in the middle of a song, and I had to be calm on a stage with like over like several hundred people like watching while the rap continued. Walk to my guitar bag, which is properly placed next to the amp, and get the spare cable, replace it, come back in for the final second choruses. Like nothing happened.
I totally get that when you're performing at a small venue and it's just maybe you and a couple bandmates, it's not like you have like technicians on hand where it's just like, hey, my cable's off, right? Like I need, can you just quickly grab it in the bag and fix it, right? Like sometimes like you have to be, your own technician and things like that.
Oh yeah. at least to, yeah, I think if you want to be a performer that like, I think, gets to continue performing and has an energy of like, respect, I think ownership is a big thing. Like trying not to get saved, I think, as much as possible. As in, you do the saving, you're the one who finds out who to talk to fix it, like mid set, mid show. And if there are no solutions, like you're the one who owns up and like tells the audience what's going on or tells your bandmates what's going on. And then from there you do it live. You do the best thing you can do, right? Like you need to grab a tambourine. All right, I'm a tambourine person for the rest of the show, you know. But ownership, I think it's respect for yourself and respect for the craft too.